All right, minutes passed. All right, moving on to first select woman's update. We're going to try sharing share screen. Just give me 1 second. See if this works. Can you see that?
No.
No. All right, why isn't this working?
There's one final button that says share after you pick the one you want. Usually off to the right below.
Yeah. Open system security and privacy to grant. Yeah. Nope. I did this before when I've done this. I don't know. Security and privacy to grant open system preferences. So it's not. Huh. All right. It's just not letting me do it for some reason.
You're just clicking the you're clicking the share screen button down on the bottom bar.
Yeah, I'm doing the share screen button, and then it pops up these choices, and I click on Microsoft PowerPoint.
And then on the bottom right, it says share.
Yeah, and I do that, and then I think it says allow Zoom to share your screen, open system preferences, security and privacy to grant access, open system preferences.
Oh, you might
I got to go and change
set.
my. Give me 1 second. I've done this before though. I don't know why all of a sudden.
Zoom's been making some changes.
Yeah, this might have been
Probably
a
the third
security. Oh, all right, there we go. Yeah, that's a new thing. Okay. All right. Apologize for that. For those watching, let me try it again now. I will share my screen. There we go. Got it?
Yep, now it's working.
Okay, great. All right, good morning, everybody. So just a quick update. We've been working on implementing the various executive orders that have been coming out of the governor's office. As many of you know, one of them was a new budget approval process that the board set in motion 2 weeks ago. And then on April 2nd, the Board of Finance met and made some adjustments to the proposed budget for this next fiscal year. And that is now going to be showing up in the paper, and they will be having a public hearing on April 29th. And there'll be more details on the website, hopefully this week, Lauren, about how people can make comments on the proposed budget. And then the Board of Finance will convene again on May 5th and possibly make some additional changes and then set the mill rate. So typically we would have had a budget referendum later in the month that requires several weeks of lead up to that budget referendum. And now the process just for this year only is the Board of Finance will be voting on the budget, and that'll be on May 5th. The governor also put out a number of different executive orders about property tax relief, and that's something that we're going to be talking about later today on the agenda. We're required to pick a program, and we have to choose that by April 25th. And there's a form we have to fill out and send to the state to show that we've selected a program. So this is not an optional thing. This is required by the executive order, and we'll talk more about that later. The governor also did a number of things for senior tax relief programs. And so some of our tax relief programs have local application as well. And so I'm basically mirroring the governor's executive order, and we'll be signing some executive orders either today or tomorrow that basically, if you already participated in some sort of senior tax relief program, you will be automatically renewed for the next year. These programs require a lot of documentation and oftentimes require one-on-one interaction with people at the senior center to go through the application process. And so basically we will be waiving any of that requirements if you already have been accepted into one of these programs. And I've done an executive order already for a senior tax freeze program. These programs are the deferral and the abatement programs, and these are related to specific state statute. So those will be forthcoming, the executive orders, and then we're going to get letters out to all people participating in those programs so they understand kind of the new process, and that they basically don't have to do anything for this year. He also passed a executive order basically banning short-term rentals for a period of time, and they can only be used for considered essential workers. And we're looking at putting a notification to people who either rent out properties for short-term basis, or we also have a hotel here in town. There's a little confusion about the time horizon for this. I guess the lodging and hospitality industry is looking at this as expiring the end of April, whereas our council seems to think this extends through September 5th, I think is the date, which is when the actual emergency orders for the governor expires. That's obviously a big deal for anybody that rents out their property for the summer for less than 31 days. So we're trying to get some clarification on that, and we will send something out to the town, make a notification so that people understand what the actual rules are in place right now. But that's required some homework, and I know Dave Anderson's been looking into that as well, and we've been speaking to council. The small business assistance program, there's been a lot going on both at the federal and state level, and I'll let Bruce, when he gives his update, talk about the local business task force, because I know you guys met on Friday. About kind of how people are, able to get information on the programs and apply. Other town meeting activities. We have a outstanding special appropriation that we haven't been able to finalize because that was supposed to go to town meeting, and we have the Island Avenue lease. And from what we're hearing right now, the special appropriation actually, it's unclear. Either I'm able to just approve it based under executive order, or we might have to have another vote of the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance. It does not have to go to town meeting, but it may be that we have to have some sort of vote by each board. So we're looking into that. I think the initial thought was that I could just sign it and we were done with it. And this has to do with, Lauren, correct me if I'm wrong, this has to do with the transportation, school bus transportation for OLM.
Yes. And there's
Okay.
one for the Board of Ed too, I think. There were two special appropriations that we were supposed to approve on March 23rd.
Okay. So more to come on that. I mean, because it's a little, we kind of were going in one direction and then we heard, oh no, we have to have a vote by the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance. And it could be us sending it to town meeting qualifies for that. So our next meeting, we'll have that resolved one way or the other. So we're just trying to get clarification. And then on the Island Avenue lease, according to our town council right now, we have to provide for some way to hold a virtual town meeting. And that would require some creativity. And so we're looking into different options, and we'll talk maybe in another meeting more about what we might want to do for that going forward. Part of this all depends on how long we feel we'll be in the state of social distancing restrictions, which we know is now till May 20th. And then for boards and commission meetings, we're launching this new platform, which is basically the Zoom webinar format. And Lauren's going to be working with the different boards and commissions this week, providing them instructions about how to do their meetings, so that they can start getting back to business. I know a lot of people have been reaching out to us eager, and at least now we have a platform that works, that we can allow for public comment and also record the meetings, things like that. So lots going on about changes and things, but this is I think the third time second time we used this platform at the EDC meeting last week, and we'll see how it goes today. And then if everybody's happy with it, we can continue to use this going forward for other boards and commission meetings. It's not letting me go to the next page. Hold on a second. There we go. Other kind of local issues, just to give a public, obviously the governor came out again on Friday or Thursday. Schools are definitely going to be remaining closed until May 20th. and non-essential businesses will stay closed. So we're still going to be in this kind of state of strict social distancing until May 20th, which is, quite a ways away. So at least it gives us a timeline to work on. We continue to keep our beach facilities and parks open. But we're going to be monitoring, people adhering to the social distancing. I know there's been some crowd issues at Rockland Preserve and sometimes at the Surf Club. So we're just going to have to keep monitoring the situation as the weather gets warmer. We'll have to maybe make some more decisions in terms of keeping the parks open. We're also looking to see for guidance from the state. Hammonasset is in our borders, and my view all along has been that as long as Hammonasset is open, the last thing we want to do is funnel more people into Hammonasset by closing our own facilities to residents, because a lot of people just end up going there for their activities, whether it's biking or walking. Salt Meadow Park, we are going to leave open during the week, but we're going to keep it closed during the weekends because that has tended to be a spillover place for people wanting to go to Hammonasset. And as traffic picks up there and they're limiting parking capacity at Hammonasset, we want to keep, we don't want to encourage people to park there and walk into the park. But we will keep the gates up during the week. And I know a lot of people were concerned about that when they heard that we were going to be closing it, but we will keep it open during the week right now. The stump dump, we've gotten lots of calls. And I think, as I might have mentioned at previous meetings, we had some staffing issues there that we needed to work through to make sure that we could have a safe environment. But we're putting together some work rules and we've worked out a plan. And so our intention is to open that on April 21st. It'll be posted officially on the website once we've got all the kinks worked out. But we will go back to regular operating schedule, which is Tuesday through Saturday. And the same hours of operation as before, but we will only be open to residents. And so no commercial contractors. It'll just be residents only. That way it'll avoid any kind of contact and, having to charge fees or anything for people using the facility. And I know a lot of people are eager to get their yards cleaned up and start hauling things away. So we want to be able to provide that service to residents. Surprisingly, we've gotten questions about beach pass sales. And originally we start selling them April 1st. We put it all on hold until May 1st to evaluate the system. What we didn't want to create was having our beaches closed and yet people having bought passes. So there'll be more updates about, how we're going to handle beach passes going forward. I mean, I think as of right now, the hope is that we'll be able to use our beaches normally this summer. But I think we have to monitor the situation and see how it all goes. So there'll be further updates on that. And I think that's it in terms of my update. I'll turn it over to, so how do I unshare? I stop share. Okay, great. All right. I will turn it over to Selectmen Liaison reports, which I know a lot of meetings haven't happened, but I'm sure there's a few updates people can share.
So I can go. Peggy, as you mentioned, we held a meeting on Friday. We invited members of the local business community to participate with Kyle Eagleson, who is the CFO of Guilford Savings Bank, and Jonathan Leone of Mason, DeMarco, and Shaw as a CPA. We really wanted to discuss the relative merits of the two primary aid packages out there for small businesses. The first is the SBA EIDL, which is an economic injury loan and grant program, and the Paycheck Protection Plan or program, which is the part of that bigger $2 trillion stimulus package. The applications for the PPP opened up on Friday for sole proprietors and independent contractors. And there has been a lot of changes to that program in real time, right up until almost the day that it started taking applications at local banks. So that I felt was a good meeting. I think we gave the community some good information. Interestingly enough, one of the biggest questions that came up was the eligibility for unemployment for sole proprietors and independent contractors. This is a group of business people that aren't usually eligible to file for unemployment. But in one of the early executive orders by the governor, he did make them eligible for that. So we had to defer on some of those questions because we just didn't have the right people in the mix. But the meeting was well attended. We were able to shine some clarity on the relative programs. My encouragement, my strong encouragement, was for employers with employees to consider the PPP program first. And the reason for that is, at its heart, it is intended to put people back to work, or at least put people back on the payroll with federal money. And so even for small employers with just a few employees, that can make a big impact in the community here. So hopefully we'll see our businesses doing that and doing it successfully. And we can see some cash infused into the community relatively quickly. I know that those applications are starting to become approved. I'm not aware of any funding yet received by any businesses, but the banks are getting them processed through the SBA and responding back to applicants that they've been approved or not.
Well, that's good to hear, because I know even just earlier last week, it was a lot of frustration, I think, trying to apply and get banks to focus on it, but it seems like they've kind of caught up now a little bit.
So I think they're in the process of catching up. This is all moving very, very quickly for the banks. The rules, as I mentioned, were changing almost minute to minute, and even up onto the eve of the applications being open. So banks have rushed in to figure out how to accept applications, whether it's a PDF form that gets filled in and then emailed back, or an online form. I've seen banks doing both.
Mhm.
And they're working hard, especially our community banks. The bigger banks, I think, are working hard as well, but their requirements are a little bit more vigorous, say, than a local banks are.
And is that, I'd also heard that you had to go to a bank that was you were an existing customer. Is that true?
So several banks have done that. I know that Essex has done that, and Citizens is doing that. Guilford Savings Bank is accepting any application. So any small business, regardless of their prior affiliation, is welcome to apply with Guilford Savings Bank.
Okay, that's good to hear.
So it's really up to the banks to decide what they want to do.
Just real quickly on the unemployment for the independent contractors and self-employed. On one of the calls we have these municipal calls 2 to 3 times a week with the governor or surrogates of the governor, different commissioners, and they talked about that. The biggest issue with that is there's no infrastructure for that in terms of applying for those benefits and serving that community. So they've literally went out and hired all new staff. They're writing new programs. So I'm not sure if anybody's had any luck applying for relief if you are a independent contractor or self-employed, but it is coming. It's just they don't have the ability to process those applications right now. So,
and that's one of the reasons why I was encouraging contractors and pass-through organizations, sole member LLCs, to apply for the PPP, because their pay is eligible as a payroll expense and would in effect circumvent the state unemployment insurance program and deposit the money directly to them. So it might be a more straightforward path to them receiving at least 8 weeks of unemployment benefit effectively. So I think that may be a better way. And quite frankly, it is the elegance of this PPP program that's saying, the government is saying to the businesses, you're going to be more effective at distributing unemployment money than the state government can be. So here's the money. Now go and pay your employees. So there's that. The other thing is I attended the EDC meeting on Thursday, and that new format did work very well, I thought. There was one of the members was concerned early in the very early days of the task force. We wanted to get the pulse of the business community. And so the chair of the EDC and the chair or the executive director of the chamber put out a very, very quick survey to better understand what the concerns were in the business community. One of the members was concerned that the chair acted unilaterally in that. And I just want to say to this board that, some of this stuff is a little bit out of the norm for us, for all of us. But I felt it was important to get a sense of what was concerning our local businesses quickly, and to not necessarily go through a more traditional meeting and voting structure. So, I think that as things settle into a new routine, we will leverage the power of the commission more. But we got some good early information, and subsequently have had some good conversations with the business community.
Bruce, how many businesses are attending? Do you have a sense?
So we had about 60 participants on Friday.
That's pretty good.
So yeah, it was very good, and they weren't all businesses, but we had some nonprofits. And of course, they were impacted by this as well.
Are these sessions open to the public?
They are. The format that we were using, I think we were limited to 100. So we were asking people to register, and we ended up having 60.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if we could make that, because I know that the town obviously is on the task force, right? Maybe we start running that through the town and through the town website, and we might.
Yeah, I didn't even know they were happening, to be honest with you. So I
Yeah,
would have
I
loved
think it
to
was going to
attend.
the chamber, this last one, right? Did this go through the chamber?
Well,
That's
so
correct.
we did send out emails through the chamber. I thought that we had reached out to Rita or Art to post it on the website. Did we not make that happen, Art?
I think Rita usually handles the website postings, but
I'm not sure it did get up on the website, but I know the chamber sent out the blast, which
I'm just thinking in terms of, having it, because also we have a better platform, probably. We can have more participants through our.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So maybe
Absolutely.
the next one we'll do it through the town. And then we can blast it out through the town email distribution, and then the chamber can share that with its list.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The other thing that came up in the EDC meeting, one of the commissioners asked what we were doing about the bonding referendum in the fall. And I said, as of the moment, it is stay the course. That may change in the future, but that right now, there was no discussion to change that date.
Yeah, I think that's something that we should, I need to meet with the chairs of the Board of Finance and the Board of Education, have some conversations, and then we as a board should talk about, because I think also we're getting close to where, if we were to actually consider doing that, we should be starting to communicate those plans. And I know everything's just been put on hold. So I think that is a topic we should probably put on our next meeting agenda to talk about and get thoughts on what we think we want to do on those referendum.
I agree.
Any other liaison updates?
Yeah, I'm going to try one. As appropriate this morning, we are focused on the details of trying to keep this town running. But I thought it would be good to just pause for a moment and kind of gaze a little more broadly. We all serve as liaisons to the public as elected officials. And it seems to me this is a point in time where we should recognize what's really going on here in town. We have a public that is showing great spirit and patience and optimism and adaptability. And although at times not every single one of our citizens is compliant with what we would like them to be doing, I have nothing but praise for the general public response to what's been going on and how folks have cooperated as a community with what we've been asking them to do. It seems to me it's also a moment to praise and salute our first responders and our entire town staff for the efforts they make on our behalf. And finally, I'm very proud of this Board of Selectmen, especially its first select woman, for the steadiness and calmness and credibility and earnestness that we've been able to exhibit as leaders of this community. I'd like to think that while some of our citizens may feel isolated, that we all realize that we're not alone. And I think our municipal government is part of the reason that to my way of thinking, the public has been exhibiting such good spirit and cooperation with what has been asked of them at this trying point.
Thank you, Al. That's nice words. It does, we get into kind of the minutia of making government work, and we sometimes have to step back and look at the bigger picture. So thank you for pointing that out. And I do think that the public is taking this very seriously. I was very surprised actually when I went to Stop and Shop and I saw most people were wearing masks. So I think, you know, there's a different level, I think, out there now of recognition of the seriousness of the situation. Well, thank you for those words. Anybody else have anything to share or?
I have a couple things. The senior commission did not meet, but I know the senior center has been very active in their programs, their volunteer programs to deliver meals and run errands for seniors in the community. And also wanted to just kind of highlight that, so the senior center has a pen pal program intended to match seniors with kids in the community, sending emails to each other to try to help with this period of isolation. And the pen pal program was actually mentioned in a New York Times article, the program in Madison this weekend. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So you should check that out. And then the planning and zoning is meeting on the 16th and there's a public hearing for the application for Boston Post Road.
Okay. And that for that specific meeting, that will be all available on the website in terms of the how the public can participate and submit comment as well. And that will be under the new format. Okay. Scott, do you have anything or?
No, I mean, other than, you know, I participate with you and Sam and others on the emergency operations meetings, which is now Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and just to see the, you know, how the town is taking things so seriously and the town is coming together, rallying, is incredibly impressive. I mean, Sam leads a tight ship there, and you know, really bringing all our emergency services together to focus on, you know, ensuring that our town is safe. And it's very impressive, and you know, a huge thank you to all the people that are pulling together. So I think that's all I wanted to say.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I think moving on, is there any public comment, Lauren?
We have one question right now in the Q&A, and I'll read that. I don't see any other hands raised. So we have one question, and I should have said this at the beginning of the meeting. Any public comment that needs to be made has to still use your first and last name and your address, just like if you were in the building. So if the person who asked the question can retype their name and address for me, and then I will read their question into the record. Hopefully you're still there.
I mean, I think you can go.
Yeah, so the question is from someone named Maureen. So hopefully you can still hear me and you will, there we go. Maureen Lopes,
There you go.
25 Old Farms Road. Thank you. She's asking, is there one place where she can get timely updates on the need for food donations and the like? She does not know where the needs are most critical in the town. So I know Austin is on the line. If you want, I can add Austin in as a panelist now to answer that question.
Sure. I mean, if he can't join, I mean, I can speak to the fact that, you know, the senior center is collecting donations. And I know they've been coordinating with the food pantry in Madison. And so, oh, there he
Here he
he's
is.
joining
There
up.
he is.
Go ahead.
There you go. Sorry about that, lost connection. So we are taking donations here at the senior center Monday, all week. We have people here at night from 4 to 8 collecting donations. We're taking any non-perishable food that people would like to deliver, and we are taking donations every day. We have people stop in multiple times a day. And then we are collecting the food here and then reaching out to seniors as well as folks who are clients of youth and family services. And if the need is out there, we provide the food for them.
So she followed up with another question here, Austin. She just said, is the need being met?
As far as we know, yes. So anyone who has asked for anything so far has gotten whatever they needed. And if there are people out there that, you know, haven't asked but are in need, we definitely suggest they contact me at my office here, and we'll take care of it for them.
There's also, the school continues to provide lunches for families who had qualified under the program during the school year for a free lunch. But now I know, from my understanding, that's expanded now. We have a lot more people, and I don't think are we requiring any kind of qualification for that?
No, we never required any qualification. It was always open for anyone who had a need of any sort to come. It started off kind of slow. In the end, as of last few days, we were Monday through Friday. They're open for an hour from 11 to 12, and anybody who has a student, 18-year-olds or younger, welcome to come by and pick up a sandwich. It's hands-free. Nobody gets out of their car. And it's under the bridge at Daniel Hand High School. We've been serving about 80 lunches, and we provide about the same number of breakfasts for the next day at the same time.
Okay, I guess I was referring to the school lunch program during a normal school year. You qualify, don't you?
We do not
have to-
require, we
Oh.
don't require that because
Oh,
we never want to identify anybody in that program,
okay.
and it's open to anyone who wants to come.
Okay.
So it's been open that way from day one.
All right, great. Thank you. So is that it for public comment? All right, great. Thank you. Moving on to the update on the town's response to the COVID-19 pandemic and to state directives. So I'll let Sam give an update since our meeting 2 weeks ago. I don't even remember when it was. Go ahead, Sam. Not our meeting, but I mean the Board of Selectmen meeting.
Hang on. All right, good morning, everybody. So as we adjust to our new norm here, unfortunately, we're going to be in this for a little while longer. The cases in Connecticut now are over, hang on, just lost the page. So we're up over 12,000 positive cases with 554 deaths. We have a total of 40 confirmed cases in Madison. You know, six of those cases have recovered. So we're starting to get numbers on recovering people recovering from the disease. So we're not out of the woods yet. Our peak is scheduled to, well, the predicted peak of this hitting Connecticut is between the 21st and 24th of April. So it's coming up next week. It's been pushed out So the social distancing, it has been working. The peak was supposed to be this past weekend, and we haven't seen that yet. And, if we keep our due diligence and maintain what we're doing, maybe we can, put, not peak, maybe we could just stay status quo and the numbers will start going down. So on a better side, the community is really stepping up. We've had requests from a lot of residents asking what they can do for first responders and the healthcare workers. Somebody dropped off, I don't know how much money it was, but they dropped off some money to Grand Pete's, and they said deliver some food to the ambulance. So they did that. That happened on Friday. Bradley and Wall also donated a bunch of food to the Madison Host Company downtown for the guys. I got an email. This is Doug Shaw, who is the president of Ben Callahan Sports and Fitness Complex. They're partnering up with the Marketplace of Guilford, the Branford Rotary, Bishop Orchards, and the Soundview Family YMCA. And they offered to deliver food for seniors and first responders and healthcare workers that can't get out to the stores. So you can go to his website on at bc2sports.org. And if you need to sign up and order, you can order the food and they'll deliver it for free. So the community is really stepping up a lot to help out. And that's a good sign in these times. But we need to maintain our diligence and keep our social distancing. And I know it was probably tough this past weekend with the Easter holiday that, not being able to get everybody together. So, everybody understands what's going on, and, our main goal is keep everybody safe. And then to top it off, not only do we have to deal with this pandemic, but we got some pretty significant winds coming this afternoon with rain, probably another couple inches of rain between 12 and 6, and we could see hurricane force winds along the shoreline here. So the winds are supposed to blow 30 to 40 miles sustained with gusts up to 70, 75 miles an hour. So we're praying for the best and hoping that we don't lose power, but I imagine we're going to sustain some damage to our infrastructure here along the shoreline. I did get a preparedness report from Eversource. They're ready to respond to get things back to normal as quick as possible. That's all I have for an update.
I know power outages now are even more significant since we're all relying on technology much more heavily to do our jobs and to communicate with each other. So hopefully, fingers crossed, it won't be too bad.
Oh, and school too.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Any questions for Sam from the board? No? All right, great. We've got Trent on the line also. So Trent, if you could provide an update from the health department.
Thanks, Peggy. Good morning, everyone. Sorry about that. I had some problems connecting. So just to reiterate, so we actually have 41 cases this morning positive. And yeah, we're about 4 to 6 are still hospitalized. We'll do our contact tracing later on this afternoon. For everybody's information, those who are positive in town, I touch base and provide guidance to those individuals. At minimum, a letter is sent to the resident, and we do follow up and wellness checks on all those individuals and their families, just to make sure that, obviously the positive resident is doing well and is on the upswing. And we also want to make sure that they're practicing, those social distancing and practicing within the home, and also out in public where, a resident who is positive, they'll be advised to have only one family member go to a grocery store, and that family member should, wear a mask and protect themselves like they're doing in the house. So we're definitely on top of that. We're, contact tracing we've seen is also really helped keep the numbers down within towns. So those are usually good things, to proceed with. And, I get a lot of questions about the restaurants, and, some people feel like there should be more control measures. So just for everybody's knowledge, we do provide guidance to the restaurants, and I'm on them 24/7. I provide guidance to them weekly to increase their control measures and to do everything that they can to protect not only themselves, but our customers and our residents. So if there's glove use issues, if there's PPE issues that you see from a restaurant or anything like that, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Some people have already, and we're on top of that, and we send some people out to respond ASAP. Aside from that, the other big focus now that we're seeing in other towns, and what we've been focusing on in our town specifically, I don't want to overlap too much with our EOC meetings peg, but we're focusing a lot on our vulnerable populations, I said. So, that's our nursing and our assisted living facilities. We want to make sure that, there no outbreaks are happening in those facilities as we see those happen across the state now. And there's a surge plan that we'll be discussing, and those are the places that we got to now try to protect now that we see that our community is doing better and well, but not completely out of the way, but that's what we're focused on now. And aside from that, we also have, I'm going to be coordinating with the first responders again, try to get them some more PPE. I got something scheduled for a pickup this week, so we'll get them resituated and go from there. If there's any questions, I'm willing and able.
Okay, great. Any questions from the board?
Trent, is there, you may have said this and I may have spaced out. So grocery stores?
Yeah.
Are they mandated to have gloves on?
They're not mandated to have gloves on. No, they're not mandated. It's strong recommendation, and the guidance essentially would be that, strong recommendations from me.
I see it like at Roberts, they're doing, all the employees are wearing masks now too, so.
Right, yeah, that was something that I reached out to Roberts. There was a question to me, and I told him that would be a best practice, just to protect his employees as well.
Great, thanks.
We had some questions about delivery guys or girls. So yes, those individuals, if you're a food establishment listening in, please, and I'm going to stress this, it shows goodwill, and it shows responsibility. You can't have lack of accountability in a pandemic like this. To have your delivery, male or female, wear gloves and a face mask when delivering food. It just goes a long way. It goes a long way.
Okay. Any other questions for Trent from the board? No?
Thanks,
All right.
Trent.
Chief Drum, would you like to provide us an update?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Hi, good morning, everybody. I think this is, I see what a difference a day makes. I think what a difference a week makes. Obviously, we're dealing with this pandemic, but I noticed, and I agree with Selectman Goldberg, and also to Sam's words, I think the public has really stepped up, and they are maintaining safe distance. I'm appreciative of the fact we've had great response to the signs that we put up around town. I think we're probably going to move one of the message boards so I could put some information supportive to the community that comes from Youth and Family Services with a message for people seeking help. Probably fix that somewhere in the downtown area. The officers, we're still on 8-hour shifts, 9-hour shifts. I don't anticipate we're going to go to 12-hour shifts. As far as personnel, still down one dispatcher and one officer. They both tested negative for COVID-19. However, they are self-quarantine. As far as Hammond Acid, I think that, having extra personnel is assisted. We had probably a spike in attendance over the weekend, especially when the weather was good prior to the rain or the coldness that came in. We continue to monitor that. There was a couple of people that tried to organize, they titled it a safe distance biking group, and apparently it was, I don't know how you would do that with 40 people. So we encouraged them to do other. As far as that, I think short term, we'll continue to operate. at 100%. I think the long-term, who says opportunity doesn't come out of something like this? I think Art, at some point, I'd like to have a discussion as some of the services we could put online permanently for our citizens here in town, especially when they have to reach out to the police department. It's amazing the information that we gather up front, and we're able to get back to them. And instead of having them to come down to the police department, meet with an officer, it actually opened up a margin of opportunity. So that's a further discussion. It'll be like the big PDs. Outside of that, I really don't have any other news. We are getting donations at the PD. We are people that are trying to put meals up with our officers, and I'm very appreciative of that. And one interesting, yesterday I met with Dr. Henry Lee, who donated a few hundred masks to the town of Madison. So we
cool.
thank him for that. So
Yes,
that's
indeed.
all I have. Unless anyone has any questions.
Hey, Chief, I saw, it may just be an interesting case that just happened to pop up over the weekend, but are you guys seeing more, because of the use of the internet and Zoom and things like that, are you seeing more sort of internet related kind of stuff that you guys are focused on as opposed to maybe on the streets?
Well, yes and no. I think that those of us that become new to the Zoom family have learned some of the better protocols to maintain them as safe. Don't post to the public that people need to identify to come into the meeting. As you know, we reported last week, we've made an arrest in regards to Zoom bombing, with another arrest coming this week out of New York involving the same incident. Burglaries, crimes like that are down. Other crimes are up. They're starting. We see an uptick in some of the interpersonal, meaning domestic situations, people in the interpersonal. I think it's tough for people being in their homes and they're not used to it. So, well, once again, we're approaching that very open-minded. We're approaching that with the skill set we have in dealing with situations like that. We're referring a lot of people to additional services external to the town, particularly in the area of mental health. So.
Okay,
Yep.
well, I appreciate all the hard work, Jack, and I do think that, the public is really stepping up now. And not only just in terms of adhering to the social distancing, but the donations keep coming in, which is great. We do have a long haul, though. We have to get to May 20th now, which is, another, 6 weeks, 5 weeks. So I just appreciate the public staying with us, and we're all in this together. And, we just hope to see this curve stay as flat as possible, so we can come out of this strong and not have to go back into some sort of, strict quarantine measures later in the summer. I've been reading a lot about the different curve styles that different communities have been experiencing, and in terms of when they've come out too early from these social distancing directives, and when they hold strong and eventually come out of it and not have to go back into any kind of shutdown or lockdown. So let's all hope we can get to that point. I guess from the town side, probably those are some of the key. We have a lot of staff online. I don't know if any of the board has questions for some of the staff, but those are kind of the 3 areas we've been providing, to the community from an emergency standpoint. So any from the board, do you want any of the other staff to speak?
This isn't specifically a response to the virus, but we have a big project going on, the accounting system implementation. And I think if we could get an update from Stacy and Art on how that's proceeding. And then also, maybe not right now because it's a bit of a cold question, but as part of the updates, Peggy, could we start to get a tally of what the town has spent so far on a running basis directly in response to this? Something that at least just gives us a sense of the financial impact. And like I said, I don't think that I would put you on the spot and say what's that right now, but maybe as we move forward.
Well, we have Stacy on the line, and I think we're running around, is it $60,000 now, Stacy?
We're at about 71,000 to
Okay.
date, and that includes cleaning expenses. When we had to close town hall, that was pretty costly, as well as Zoom meeting setups and getting licenses for that, and food and masks. So currently, I just ran the report a little while ago. We're about 71,000 on the
Okay.
town side, and then the school side, we're about 60,000 on their side. So.
Okay.
So you have an
Yeah, and
update. I agree. I
and-
think it's way too premature to do anything now, but I am definitely running tallies, printing reports, and I can update you at every board meeting.
Yeah, and I think the biggest, we had some initial expenses where we had planned for, some of the things that we had done in terms of just helping the community, maintaining Meals on Wheels, but then the cleaning, surprisingly, is very expensive. And every time an ambulance goes out to a call, it has to come back and get, I don't know if you call it disinfected or whatever. It has to go through a cleaning process. The police department has had to go through that a few times. We did all of town hall. And one thing I did forget to mention that, we do have now 2 employees who have tested positive, and both doing fairly well. I know the first employee that we had announced is on the road to recovery, and hopefully we're returning back to work. The second employee, was somebody who worked with that other individual. So, there was a contact issue there, and hopefully they will be coming, stabilizing and doing well too. But it just emphasizes, I think, the importance of maintaining a safe work environment for everybody. And like I said, the cleaning is not cheap. So that was something I don't think we'd really quite, when we talked about costs about a month ago, we were focusing on more equipment and some other necessities, but the cleaning piece is going to be one going forward, ongoing expense over the next month.
Is that a third party that comes in, Peggy, to do that, or do we do it ourselves?
We have a third party that has special, I think there's like different qualifications you have for types of cleaning, and this one's certified to do a certain level of cleaning. And so right now we're working with one vendor that Jack was able to connect with, and through the police department, Chief Drum. And they've been great. They've been very responsive. But I know we're also looking at just, working with some other individuals as well, other businesses as well. So, because the need is going to grow. Hopefully we won't have to do all town hall again. But, we got to we had to clean all the trucks in Public Works. So that was a little bit of a unexpected cost, but well worth the money.
And I'm sure all the money is well and appropriately
Yeah.
Being spent. It's just sort of a running tab so that we understand the magnitude.
Yep.
Of this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I know that Stacy's been in contact regularly with Jean also on kind of where that was all going in terms of expenses too with the Board of Finance. So she's up to speed. Okay, any other questions for staff at all? And Stacy will be on, and I mean, because the next, as we get further down, we'll get into some of the issues with the deferral programs, the tax deferral programs. So the next on the list was update on schools from the Board of Education, Superintendent Tom Scurry. So Tom, are you on?
I'm here. Can you see me?
Oh, okay, there you are.
The guy with the New York Giants hat on.
Oh, it was so funny because the name on there had a different name.
It said Stacy before.
I got
We had 2 Stacys on.
and I thought I kind of looks like him, but you do look a little different.
He was a stalker.
Yes.
That's my question to Chief Drum earlier.
All right, great, Tom. So if you could
Well, since you mentioned Chief Drum, I'll start with that one. Unfortunately, our town, our school system was all over the national news because we were probably the first district to, I'd say, work with law enforcement to deal with any of the Zoom bombing that had happened. And I just want to thank Detectives Mulhern, Sudak, Chief Drum, and the whole team for helping us really reconcile that quickly. I think that we put that to bed, and I don't foresee any issues. Unfortunately, it led to us needing to cease the end of use of Zoom. We're going to move everything over to Google now. But that said, thank you, Chief, for helping us work through that. A couple other quick updates is that I presented to the Board of Ed, time blends here, I think a week ago Tuesday, that the spring vacation was supposed to be last week. And just because we had started distance learning, it didn't make any sense to honor that, though a number of districts were still honoring their spring vacation, either this week or last week. And I had asked if we can look at a midpoint between March 30th and June 18th. So I proposed May 4th to May 8th. I brought it to the policy committee last week, and the board is going to vote on that on tomorrow night, most likely. We've had executive orders that have been fast and furious. I'm sure like the town as well. It seems like during the middle of the day, things will change. But we've been dealing with issues around transportation, and then some of the others that involve now the closure until May 20th. It's hard to imagine us going back to school at all. Quite honestly, I think we all know that, but there is some hope. And the commissioner has been wonderful. He's really trying to work with towns to honor some type of graduation for our seniors. So no news on that, but hopefully we'll get something in the next month or so that lets us have some type of graduation for our seniors. And our distance learning is up and running. Every week it seems to get a little better, and we'll continue with that all the way through June 18th. I think that's pretty much it, though, for general updates.
Okay, great. Well, and I do want to say congratulations. I know you're going to be leaving us. I'm sure everybody in the public has heard that Tom will be leaving us, and you'll be here through the end of the school year, right? Through the end of
Yes, I
June?
will, yeah.
Okay, great. Taking on a new position in Westport, so congratulations to you.
Thank you,
And
Peggy.
we appreciate your leadership throughout this crisis. As somebody who is experiencing distance learning myself with my kids, I'm grateful for the dedication of the teachers and all the hard work they put into it. It's a learning curve for everybody, but I think everybody's been patient, and I think they've done a really good job. So, I think we're all learning from each other. What's nice is they're responsive to suggestions from parents too. And it's kind of a working together to make it as effective as possible for the kids. So,
yeah, we had a parent survey, Peggy. I don't know if you completed your survey, but that's wrapping up today. And it's going to be very helpful. Yeah, very helpful for us to get that feedback. Not too many surprises, I think, in the fact that the early childhood learners, it's the most challenging at home. We knew that from day one. Your 6, 7, 8-year-olds to be doing distance learning is definitely the most challenging. So we're still working with parents on that, but thank you.
Yeah, and it is, I have an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old. So it is amazing the difference between just that age group about their tolerance and being able to sit still in front of a screen. My son, who can spend all day playing Roblox, and yet to get him to sit down to do schoolwork on the screen it is a challenge. But I think also they just miss that social interaction, so the kids it's tough for them. And I think the teachers have been great and responsive, and I know they're working hard. I mean, I've been emailing them and texting them at all different hours of the day, and they've done nothing but be responsive. So I think everybody's working hard to do the best they can under these circumstances. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Before Tom leaves, I'd like to just jump in. Tom, what is the likelihood that schools will reconvene?
Yeah. Based on my opinion, I think it's highly unlikely. We haven't been giving any indication as to, what the criteria would be. So it's hard to project it. I would think that there have to be some criteria to establish a likelihood. And I don't know what that criteria would be. I think the biggest fear is that you open and, 3-4 days in, someone gets diagnosed in your school. I guess you got to shut down again. So I guess a lot depends on what happens over the next month or so until May 20th. If the curve has flattened to a degree that new cases aren't popping up, and I'm just guessing at that point.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Tom? No?
No, not a question, but I would just like to say thank you to our friend Tom Scarice, who has been a huge champion of children. I have obviously 2 that have gone through the system and 1 as a senior this year who will unfortunately be missing her prom and maybe her graduation. We don't know all the details yet, but Tom Scarice has been an advocate for children, my children personally, and teachers and administrators. Just watching the care and feeding of that Board of Education and the administration, and just all the love that he's poured into our Madison school system is beyond appreciated. We are very lucky to have Tom Scarice, and we wish him well in his new endeavors, of which my wife used to teach in Westport Public Schools, so I know he's going to a good one. So.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thank you and good luck to you, Tom, but I'm sure we'll be seeing you here in the next couple of months because the world keeps changing every day with a new order. Well, actually, and one other thing I just wanted to point out is this getting back to executive orders, but one significant one that came out, we haven't really talked about, but just so the board, I'm sure, is aware of this, is the one about requiring, through the end of the year, the schools to continue to pay employees. It was very strong directives given out of the governor's office that basically requires school districts to continue to pay teachers, continue to pay paraprofessionals, cafeteria workers, administrators. So, I know a lot of the public has reached out asking about, savings from the fact that we're doing distance learning and, because staffing requirements might be different. But actually the governor has made it essential that essentially we have no discretion in that. And I will say they are all working hard anyway. And I've, experienced that with my own kids, but they kind of, mandated essentially that school districts just continue to operate and pay people as if the schools were open on a normal basis.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's accurate description.
Yeah, I think the teachers are probably working as hard as they ever have. With the planning and preparation, it's very, very time consuming and challenging. But there's been other executive orders that have come down to address. For example, I see arts on the line, transportation. And I know that we've been because every town has their own contract, their own vendor. There's some vendors that are around more than others, but so that's been a tricky one. And then the cafeteria employees also, there's a revenue-based enterprise there in schools. So Art, any general update on the transportation piece right now, or do we think we should hold off until after the Board of Ed meeting tomorrow night?
Well, I think that more information is to follow, obviously, but the CARES Act and all, it does have a requirement that contractors are paid also, regarding the continuity of operations, business operations. So we're working with the bus company and our attorneys to look at, an appropriate agreement. But there is a mandate that the contracts get paid, and we are looking at all of that, and hopefully there's some reimbursements on that too, but that's to be seen.
Okay, great. Just helpful.
Quick, just a question if you know the answer, Art. So I understand the logic behind continuing to pay these support people and the contractors. In our opinion of the bus services, for instance, are they required to continue to pay their employees during this time?
Well, I think that's the whole point of the executive order and the CARES Act, is to make sure that all of the money is going towards keeping the employees on the payroll and things like keeping the fleet ready. I mean, if they said we're going back to school on May 21st, you can't have every bus driver in the country laid off at that time. You can't have a situation where it's impossible to operate. So, I mean, the whole point of it is based on making sure that the employees are being paid, stay on the payroll, that the fleet's being maintained and all of that. So,
Art, if I was not mistaken, isn't there language about that the money has to be directed towards salary, and that they can't be, the bus company can't be directing the money to other areas of their operation.
It has to be, I don't know that it's part of the mandate, but I don't think we would agree to anything that didn't clearly state that it was going to be going towards the employees that service us.
Yeah, our employees. Yeah.
Right, and that it's not for corporate profit and that sort of thing. So, hopefully it would not be 100% of the bill that we'd have to pay, but it will be a very hefty portion, I'm sure.
And I suspect that was the case. I just think it's worth getting out there because as people think, oh, we're still paying the bus company, somehow that's just going to enrich the owner of the bus company, and that's not the case. And I think I would just further throw the perspective on the mandates to keep these people on the payroll. We've already budgeted and paid the taxes to keep these people employed. If we force them over onto the state unemployment insurance plan, that plan is overwhelmed. We have not paid that money. So this is a bit of shuffling money from one pocket to another pocket in the same pair of pants. And if we were to try to save money on the town side and put the burden back over onto the state somehow, the state's going to come back to us and ask us for the money as individuals. And so it might not feel in the short term very rewarding that we have groups of employees that are continuing to be paid regardless of what work they are or not doing. I think for us as a community, for us as a state, it is the right way to maintain economic normalcy in this particular moment in time.
I mean, I think that's ultimately the objectives of a lot of these is to keep some sort of stability, through these programs, and, how things are going to be addressed in the longer term and what the cost is to the state. I mean, I think a lot of times the view is, well, this was budgeted and taxed for already, right? A lot of these services that we're providing. So, and also it'll depend on what the economy is going to look like 6 months from now, which none of us can predict. But it's, I think the ability to provide, like you said, that stability and consistency to, residents is a positive factor. And it also, keeps the door open that maybe we will get a month of school left in June, which I know I'm hoping for that.
Yeah.
So I would love to have my kids go back for at least a month. We can
Peggy,
even
just
extend
a
it to July.
question on that point though, that Bruce is raising. I guess I may be missing something here, but
Yeah.
was there a concern out there, Bruce, that you're hearing? Is there sort of the word on the street that people are conveying concern that the monies are not going to employees?
So I think it is probably more just information overload, and people are hearing what they want to hear. So they hear that people are still getting paid, and what they're seeing on the municipal side is different than what they're experiencing on the private side. And I think the tendency is just to take that private side perspective and apply it to the municipal side, and the logic doesn't always hold. So I think it's worthwhile for us to call out sort of what's going on behind the scenes to these headline statements, right? That we're continuing to pay the bus company, right? That headline doesn't make sense without understanding the underlying story.
Okay, helpful. I hadn't heard the concern, so helpful context. Thanks.
If I can just add, this is Stacy. The executive order actually does say that the transportation company has to provide documentation about the cost to sustain the wages as well as health insurance for the employees.
I thought.
Okay. All right, great. So I think we'll move on. Thank you, Tom, for joining us.
Thank you all. Stay safe.
Hey, Peggy, before we move on, Trent did have something that he wanted to add to the update conversation. Trent, if you're still there.
Go ahead, Trent. Trent?
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add, I mean, this could have waited for the end. My hand was raised a while ago. Just wanted to get a notification out there to the public that if there's anybody who has tested positive, and you haven't received a phone call or a letter from me or my office, to please call and let me know. Because that's the only way that we can stay ahead in this. And, you know, so far I've been doing my best I can to stay ahead of the state. But, you know, if you get notification from your PCP before I do, or if you did a rapid test somewhere in New Haven, New London, or anywhere else, please let me know if you haven't got any coordination from my office yet. That's all.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay, I think we're ready. Number 8, real quickly, is just the new boards and commission platform, which we're working today. And Lauren, if you could just, I guess is the idea that starting the week of April 20th, not this week, but next week, boards and commissions could start scheduling things. So if you want to give a quick overview.
Yeah, so the plan is that this week we will be giving out communication and education to the boards and commissions chairs, boards and commissions members, town staff, and also the public on how this type of meeting will work and how it will adhere to all of the stipulations in the governor's executive order about how we can hold remote live meetings. For anyone that is tuned into this meeting today, you'll notice that you got a Zoom link where you can attend as an attendee on Zoom. It's also live on YouTube. And if you go to the website, the agenda has all of our work as well as links to documents that are backup to the different items on the agenda that you would actually take action on. That's all laid out in the governor's executive order. So there's a team of us on town staff that have spent the last couple of weeks playing around with this webinar feature to try to make it the best possible solution for the residents to be able to be involved in the meetings and for everything to be able to run remotely, so no one has to be in the same room as each other, and we're all going to adhere to that social distancing policies. So more information is coming out over the next week, and Rita also made a really great slide presentation for the public on how it will look for them, and it's got screenshots and pictures, and it's very user friendly. So we're hoping that as of next week, more boards and commissions will be using the platform, and any board or commission that is going to use the Zoom meeting is going to have a staff host. So there will be somebody in town staff that will actually be organizing the meeting for the boards and commissions so that we keep it all uniform and meeting all of those requirements of the state.
Lauren, I'm sorry, Lauren, the instructions for the public are already on the homepage of the town.
And one thing to highlight, that for those boards and commission members who maybe aren't, technology savvy with Zoom, there's the ability to call in. So it also provides a call-in number, so you don't have to have access to a webcam or a computer necessarily. You won't be able to see the materials being presented, but they'll be emailed to you, and you can participate by telephone if having, this kind of the webcam and everything is problematic.
Yep.
Okay, any questions from the board? So that'll be going out this week, and then hopefully we can start having meetings, get things moving again. So we lost basically a month, right? Of work. So hopefully people have a lot of time in their hands and maybe start scheduling a lot of meetings from home. So
Peggy, one quick question, sorry. Are they going to be password protected, Lauren?
Yes. So, and this meeting was password protected as well, but because you were a panelist, the password is automatically embedded into your link. So that's why you might not have been asked to enter a password. But that's why when I emailed you all last week and told you that I had sent you a separate email for your panelist login, not to share it, because that link is for you as a panelist.
Got it.
Right. And so if we want to put on social media, for example, that we're having a meeting, don't send your panelist link. You can just refer to, I guess, the Agenda Center link.
Yep. So we put everything in the Agenda Center. If you go to today's meeting on the calendar on the website, you'll see the information for the meeting. You'll see the link for the YouTube live stream and the link for this Zoom meeting as an attendee.
Okay, great. Well, and I appreciate all the work that went into this. I know that Rita and Art and Lauren and Steve, and they've been working very hard to get this up and running, while also dealing with a lot of other technology challenges on the school side. So, because there have been a lot of boards that have been contacting Lauren, asking when they could get moving again and start having meetings. So the good thing is it can start happening next week.
I'd like to
Yes,
thank-
and oh, sorry. I was just
Oh,
gonna thank Dave Anderson too,
it.
because he's had a lot. He's been our guinea pig in testing this for us with planning and zoning and EDC. So Dave has been very helpful in getting us to work out the kinks together. There's Dave.
Hello.
Great. Yeah, they had a good working team to put this together. So, okay, so ready to move on then? No more comments on that topic? Great. All right. The next one is the discuss tax deferment program and low interest rate program options set forth in Governor Lamont's Executive Order 7S. A quick background for the public: on April 1st, Governor Lamont issued an executive order that suspended or modified a number of state statutes and regulations and set forth certain mandates. And one of these mandates is that the Board of Selectmen had to pick a program for tax relief. And actually, I'm going to do a screen share here. Again, so this is to the next slide. Basically, this is kind of a summary of the two tax relief programs that the executive order laid out. And the first one is called a deferment program, which basically extends the deadline for taxes due by 90 days. So for example, our typical tax bill for the new fiscal year would be due July 1st, and then there would be a 30-day grace period. And this would actually provide a 90-day grace period. So instead of being due, normally it would be July 31st. It would extend it till, it's actually not September 30th. I think it's October 2nd because of the weekends. And so basically it's offering a 90-day extension. And in the executive order, it talks about eligible taxpayers, which can include residents, businesses, and nonprofits. And the Office of, I forget what OPM stands for. Anyways, the state Office of Policy Management, I think is what it's called. Yes, Management and Guidance gave some guidance on qualifications for taxpayers. And it mentioned that taxpayers would need to have suffered a reduction in income of at least 20%. Now, the Board of Selectmen actually has the ability to extend eligibility to all taxpayers if it so choose, and can create its own criteria for qualification. So this guidance from OPM was actually just a suggestion and a guidance, but the Board of Selectmen has some discretion here. This would not apply to mortgage servicers. So if you are, if you pay your taxes through your bank, the bank would still need to pay taxes according to the normal schedule of taxes due schedule that we normally have. And that represents about 40% of our taxpayers. So about 40% of taxes collected in Madison are paid through what's called escrow accounts. And many of those escrow accounts are due to a mortgage.
This is just if you get a piece of mail from the town of Madison. Yes. If you, well, everybody gets a tax. From the tax department.
Yeah, but in terms of if you're paying, a lot of mortgages require.
Yeah, like mine, I don't get a piece of mail for the town of Madison. It just gets paid automatically through my mortgage company.
Right, exactly. So though that is about 40% of taxpayers, and that amount would be continued to be paid regularly by the mortgage servicers, because you're basically spreading out your tax payments over 12 months, and then whereas the banks are making payments to the town though on the regular schedule, which would be the July payment and then the January payment. So this would have impact basically 60% of the town and not 40% of the town. The other piece of the executive order talked about landlords, and landlords have to provide documentation of significant income decline or offer some sort of what they call commensurate forbearance. And commensurate forbearance would mean either a 25% reduction of the rent over a 90-day period or a deferral of 1 month's rent paid over the 90-day period. So, so landlords would have to pass on basically some of the benefits. If you're a commercial property owner and you're renting this out to somebody, you would have to pass on roughly 25% of the benefit of this to your actual tenant. And then this does not apply to taxes already past due. So this only applies to current taxes due starting March 10th through July 1st. And the reason we talk about July 1st is because that's when our first tax payment is due for next year's budget. So that's the deferment program. And then the other option is the low interest rate program that basically provides a 90-day window. So the tax due deadlines stay the same as they always have done. The July 1st deadline would stay the same. But the amount of interest that you would pay if you choose to pay later over a 90-day period would change to 3% versus historically it was 18%. That's the typical statutory rate. And these are not rates that the town sets, but this is a statutory rate of 18%. So instead of basically saying anybody can pay 90 days late and there's no interest, this program says you can pay 90 days late, but you're going to pay a 3% interest rate. This also allows you to benefit from delinquent taxes starting on March 10th. So if you had delinquent taxes now, for example, your interest rate would go from 18% to 3% for taxes starting April 1st. That doesn't make sense, that third bullet point. But basically it's saying that the benefit of this program is it helps people now who are already late with their taxes, whereas the other program is only referring to people going forward to defer taxes. And then this program also mandates that landlords have to offer some sort of commensurate forbearance. But there's no documentation required in this program. So those are kind of big picture, high level summaries of the two different options. And I'd asked the staff this last week, and obviously, you know, these are complicated programs and we need to understand what it means for us as a town in terms of our operations of the town, our cash flows of the town. But the other thing is what's going to benefit the community the most. And the idea here is to help people make it through these next couple months, which are some of the more difficult months that we'll be struggling with. And so our biggest, you know, tax implications coming up is the new budget. And those bills would be going out end of June. So just real quickly, I asked the Stacy, who's on the line, and then I think Colleen is also on the line, just to look at kind of what our tax situation over the summer typically is. And then what the impact would be if people were allowed to pay 90 days later than they normally are. So rather than getting most of our money in July, we will be getting most of our money in September. And some of the quick summary, just to look at historically, back in July of 2019, we collected almost half of our year's taxes by the end of the month of July. So, you know, it's significant. It's significant if you're offering, and then you have to take that amount. So that was roughly $40,000 or $40 million, excuse me. And then you have to figure the escrow amount of that, which would be about 40% of that, would not be part of this program. So if you take 40% of $40 million, you're like maybe 18 would go away. So you're basically talking $25 to $30 million of collections that might possibly be deferred out to the end of September. So what does that mean from a cash flow standpoint? So Stacy spent some time looking at the expenses. This is if we were to go with the deferral program. So I'm sorry if I'm jumping around a bit. Stacy, if you want to just talk to, and I'll get back to the regular screen mode here now. Oops.
Okay, my picture's not up anyway.
Okay. Anyway, so Stacey, if you want to talk a little bit about, what our cash needs as a town would be if, we were to grant this deferment.
Yeah, so what our office did is we took a very, very, very conservative approach. So I understand, as far as tax collections and 40%, about 32% in July overall, it's about 40% comes from escrow. But what we did is we looked at expenditures and we took the last 2 years average expenditures from July through September. So for the last 2 years, we looked at the 3 months history to see what we've spent. We also looked at our actual debt service that is coming due, as well as other commitments like lease payments out of CIP. And then we kind of took an approach that maybe we don't do some of our big contributions into the pension or the insurance fund until October. So there's all different ways we can look at it, but again, we try to be as conservative as possible. We also looked at our current revenue as far as beach and rec and other fees. And I know it's minimal compared to our taxes, but we said, okay, what if we don't collect as much while we're in closure during this period? We also look to offset those all of those items with possible revenue July, August, and September. So in the end, we came down to cash needs for July, August, and September of just shy of $13 million. So next, what we did is we looked at our cash balances. The last 2 years, we had an average cash balance of about $5 million. We also have money in STIF, which is liquid, and we also have money in Wells Fargo investments, which is also liquid, which we are now transferring over to our general fund People's account. 2 years ago, we went out to RFP, and People's guaranteed us, thank goodness, for 3 years to not go below 1.8% of interest, which is way higher than STIF and what the money is in Wells. So what we're doing is we're putting it all into People's because that's the best bet right now. And between those 3 items, we're well above the $13 million in cash. So I'm not concerned about cash flows for the first quarter of the year. Other thoughts that, we've been throwing around is we can watch July, we can watch August as far as expenditures. We can hold off on discretionary funding expenditures if we have to. We can hold off on certain capital projects if we have to. But again, I think we are fine with the analysis that we did, and again, very, very conservative. So this would support if we did defer for another 90 days in tax collections. One other thing that I can just, while I have your attention, is I did reach out to neighbor towns. I talked to Brantford for quite a while. They are doing this deferment program. They opted not to do the interest program. He also confirmed that North Brantford is doing it, Manchester is doing it, and he also thinks Guilford is also doing it. And what they are doing is they are waiving any eligibility requirements, just simply because everybody is being impacted by this COVID, as well as it would just be an administrative nightmare as far as setting criteria and monitoring the criteria. So internally, I'm being a little bit selfish for our tax collector's office, thinking that if we do, offer this to everybody, we can certainly absorb it for the, temporary 3 months and get back on track in October. And just to make myself feel better that other towns are thinking the same exact thing. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, I think that that's great because I think the concerns I had with this was number one, what does it do to our cash flow? And um, and I think that we have comfort that we shouldn't have any issue in terms of keeping operations running as normal. Secondly, you're making an assumption that even if people get a 90-day deferral, that they're still going to pay. And I will say that Madison, we looked back at, I think it was 25 years of tax collection history that included, the Great Recession, as well as some other kind of challenging times back in the 1990s. And the town we've always over collected what we budgeted for. So bottom line is Madison has never had a collection issue in terms of, people paying their taxes despite economic hardship. So, offering our citizens this ability to, pay a few months later, which might get them over the hump perhaps. And maybe hopefully that'll be a time when the economy is starting to come back and doors are starting to open. I think this would be a huge benefit to them. And I think the town could effectively deliver that to people, and it wouldn't impact operations. I will say that I think the interest program, I think it does create some headaches in terms of collection and administrating it from a tax collection standpoint, because it's such a short window of when this interest rate would be, and you'd be only accounting for some of the interest or some of the tax collections to this interest rate. So it would be administratively create a greater burden for people here in town hall to implement it. And so that's why I think we kind of shied away from that, although it would help from a cash flow standpoint, obviously, because most people would probably still pay their taxes if they had to on time. So those are some of the thoughts that we put together here, and maybe I'll just open it up for discussion. I mean, it's a lot to absorb, and we've gotten an opinion from council. There's still some questions, open-ended questions about how we would implement this. All the board needs to do right now, or if we choose not to do it now, we'd have to do it by April 25th. We have to pick a program, how we would, what rules would guide that program. We can and talk about eligibility and are we going to require people to certify that they've been impacted by COVID or not? All that stuff we can decide later. I think the bigger question is which program we want to go with, and then we can figure out implementation after that. So I will open it up for discussion. Or do I have to, we're on discussion right now, right? We're on the 9, so we don't have to do a motion until we get to 10. So. Anybody want to comment?
Well, in reading the options, I agree. I think deferment and is probably the more straightforward plan. If Stacy's comfortable with our cash flows during that period, it's probably the better way to go, at least as I understand it. The only possible exception that I could think of was second homes. Non-residents who own property in Madison and aren't using them as commercial or as income properties, because they would then be landlords at that point and covered under this. Would we consider carving them from this deferment program? And is that even a material part of our property tax base?
Well, that's a tough one. I don't, I remember talking to the assessor's office about that, like how we would get data, I guess, people who own properties here, but Madison isn't their primary residence. I don't have the statistics on that right now. We did talk about that this last week. Second of all, because we don't have any requirement for those people to register, if they're renting out their properties, there's no registration requirements right now. There's a lodging sort of, what is it called, Lauren? a license, a lodging license, but that's only what, 9 properties. So we'd have to figure out how we would implement that. I agree it's going to be a problem this summer if this other executive order bans short-term rentals through September. That means the summer season for homes that rent out for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks can't rent their properties out anymore. They can only do monthlies. So that might have a big impact on those property owners. And to provide some sort of relief to them. I mean, I think right now, I guess just thinking about this right now, they basically would just qualify, period, right? Because they're not technically, we don't see them as a landlord. They just own a separate property. Is that what you're talking about? Like somebody who owns a second home and rents it out? Because they would qualify as just a property owner.
No, I'm talking about a second homeowner who occupies the home for some period of time during the year and doesn't use it as an income property. The landlord, the person who rents their property out would be able to submit through the forbearance part of this. So this would be a vacation home owner.
Well, they
live in New York. They live in New York. They don't reside here. Would we consider accepting that property?
I mean, right now they would qualify because they're a taxpayer, right? There's no residency requirement. I see. So you're saying, would we not want to allow them to benefit from this?
I bring it up as a point of discussion.
Okay. Okay.
And I don't know if even in the aggregate, those properties that I'm describing even add up to a meaningful amount of our budget.
Right.
Right. It may be so small that it's not worth considering.
I think that's something we could certainly try to identify. And I, as I was saying before, I think I know I talked at one point about trying to get data on non-resident taxpayers, right? I think we have that from a voting standpoint. You know, people that would vote through budgets and but that's very different obviously than looking at in terms of, you know, cash flow and property value. So, but we could certainly get that type of information and pull it together.
A question. Oh, are you done, Bruce? I'm sorry.
Yep.
Did you have any follow-up, Bruce? Are you?
No, I mean, I'm not particularly stuck on this. If it's not, you know, something that's practical to do, I was just bringing it up as a like I said, as a point of discussion.
Yeah.
I had a question for Stacy. If you're still there, Stacy.
I'm here.
Okay, I can't see your face, so I don't know. When you ran your model, did you assume the same collection rate? Or when you ran your model, I'm sorry, for the deferment option, did you assume the same collection rate that we've had historically? So when, in other words, when we do collect in September, were you assuming the same collection rate?
When we do get to October 1st, yes. But basically what we did is focus on expenditures. You know, what if bare minimum we get in to get us through July, August, and September? And then, yes, we are assuming that our collection rate will be consistent with prior years when we eventually get to October.
Okay.
So she's assuming basically no collections up until the end of September. We could still meet all our cash needs, even if we don't collect any money, July, September,
Right.
October.
But what I'm saying is then what if October comes and we don't have the same rate of collections at that point? And how will that impact going forward?
Yeah, so I did look at that on a sliding scale, but I did start with our normal collections that we historically have gotten in July, and then slid that down saying, you know, as we get into October, and let's say it's not at our typical 99%, you know, through the year, we did actually look at that going out further, but for today, I just thought I would focus on the 3 months. But yes, we did look at our collections and what if we don't get the full amount that we typically would get in July, in October or November.
And how that reconciles with the budget?
Correct.
And keeping in mind that, I mean, I think you looked at, that was assuming that we're not even getting that 40% that goes into escrow, which we
But
actually.
we were, I wasn't Aaron, ultra conservative with that, going out from October through through our January payment. But we did do a reduced collection looking at that and, on a sliding scale as far as what's going to come in from from October, November, December, and then the January payment. Hopefully we would be back to speed. That makes sense?
What month is our biggest, what cash month? Is there a couple of months that hit us the hardest?
July and January, expenditure wise or revenue?
Yes. Expenditure.
Yeah, expenditures are tough because it's not even. Like I said, the first 3 months we were looking at 13 million. However, that's only 1 month of the school's operations. So once the school picks up in September, then you have 10 months where it is heavier along those lines.
Okay.
This would be a one-time deferment, right? We're talking about, like, God forbid something happens where this extends for a longer period of time. We wouldn't consider doing another deferment on top of this, right? This is just a single 90-day.
I don't think the order gives us the ability to do that.
No, it's just a one-time thing.
It was just the 90 days. And, and just to back up Aaron a little bit, it's really hard to predict. I don't know, what's going to happen in these later months. I don't know what's going to happen in January, but we did look at the collections, at a little bit lower than historically what we have gotten, and then pushed it out a little bit.
Okay.
And keep in mind that the budget assumes a lower collection rate than we typically collect. So
typically,
yeah.
Yep. So typically, like you said, Peggy, over the last 25 years, our actual collection rate has been over 99%. We currently budget at 98.75%. So you're right. We always get in more than what we rely on in our budget calculations.
I have a technical question for Stacy. Stacy, as you look at our debt instruments, are there any covenants, any promises we've made in terms of cash balances or cash flow? Anything in any of those debt instruments that we would be violating?
No, I don't think, there aren't any specific covenants when we issue an official statement for debt service. Obviously we have the commitment for debt service.
It's an obligation.
From what I don't know if there are any certain required cash balances at any given point in time. I can certainly ask our bond consultant that, but I have never seen that in an official statement out of all the ones that I've seen now.
Yeah.
Okay. My second question is, I understand this is a decision for the Board of Selectmen. Do we have any sense of how our colleagues on the Board of Finance feel about these choices that we have?
I've talked to Jean about this on Friday, and she's kind of familiar with the programs, but we didn't have an at-length discussion about one versus the other. No, we haven't gotten any kind of formal opinion from them. And I know, Stacy, you've been talking to Jean as well. Jean, are you on the call?
I think she was an attendee. I don't think she's a panelist.
She was at one point.
Okay.
I don't know how to switch her. Lauren just lost power, so you know.
No.
That's Lauren.
Okay.
I have talked to Jean, and I've told her about our conversations, Peggy, so she's aware of what we've been talking about.
Yep. I think it's a unusual place to be, because during all the other, financial crises that the town has gone through, there's never been a requirement to offer tax relief to people, right? And I think that and it's a tough decision at a local level to make, but we have to pick a program. And it's not an option that's available to us. And I think also it's a good thing to offer taxpayers. The benefit of being a town like Madison is we do have a lot of cash. People do pay their taxes typically, so we have the ability to offer something to our citizens that relieves them during this kind of crunch that we're going through right now because of businesses having to close and a lot of the uncertainty that people will be going through. I'm hoping that by the summer, doors will start opening again on businesses, but it's going to take a little while for them to ramp up back to normal operations.
Stacy, in your cash availability calculations, did you include the undesignated fund balance? Is that part of that?
No. These were liquid cash available on hand.
So we're not compromising our ability to respond to some sort of emergency in the here and now should it come up this time period.
Correct. Absolutely not. I did not include that.
Yeah, we will still have, the undesignated fund balance would require us, there will be transaction costs, right? Stacy, this is you just focused on liquid assets.
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, I think, it's a scary proposition in some ways, right? Because, we are doing something we've never done before, and we are, pushing out, collections that we normally rely on for the town to function operationally. But I think there's a lot of confidence from the staff standpoint that, we'll be able to function as normal. And if people continue to adhere to the collection rates that we've seen over the last 25 years, we'll get the money. It's just going to be deferred a couple months. So, so we should be able to continue to operate as normal. I mean, I think if people want time to absorb this and ask more questions, there's no urgency to vote on this today to pick a program. We just have to do it by April 25th. That's what the order. Yep.
I'm on now. Sorry.
Okay. Oh, great. Hey, Jean.
So so Stacy and I have been talking. I think because, Bruce, as you said, we're not taking into account the undesignated fund balance, which protects us in the worst case scenario. We're looking at expenditures. Erin, I appreciate what you're saying about what's going to happen in January, but it's a crystal ball. We don't want to overtax people. We don't want to put ourselves in a position where we're putting an added burden onto our community when we know we have really good projections. As Peggy said, we are a cash strong town, and we have the ability in the worst case scenario to actually still cover our costs. So I think from my perspective, from what I have been keeping in touch with Peggy and Stacy, I think what we can do to help the taxpayer should be our first priority.
And just to back up, this is Stacy again on the fund balance. The fund balance currently, the way it sits right now, we have 2 months of expenditures sitting in reserve.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we're, have significant concerns past September, we are in uncharted territory then in terms of the economy. I think if we look at the past and look how the behavior of Madison residents and the town expenditures, if you look the past 25 years, we've never undercollected. There were some towns that did undercollect. I remember very well during the financial crisis, I was on the Board of Finance, and there was a lot of, a couple towns, struggled for a year when their collections kind of collapsed, but we just have not had that history here. And to Jean's point, if we're able to provide some sort of relief or help to our citizens, I think it would be a benefit to them.
It sounds like the risks are incredibly low here, that we've we're comfortable that we have the funds, we can protect the town, and then we're helping the citizens out. So it seems like the risks are very low here.
Peggy, I think we're still on the discussion item, but can we just somehow do a straw poll here to see if we'd like to vote on it today as opposed to deferring it for a special meeting? I, for one, am ready to vote today.
I think I'm comfortable with the deferment plan as well.
I am too.
Yeah.
Aaron, do you have a view?
Yeah, I'm comfortable voting today. Sure.
Okay. I mean, I'm pretty comfortable with it. I will say my first inclination had been going with the other program because, it seemed a safer route. But I think at the end of the day that it looks like a lot of communities like ourselves are going to be choosing the deferral route as well. So I'm comfortable voting as well. I think some of the specifics about who qualifies and what are we going to make people certify, that kind of stuff we can work out in another meeting, how we would implement it. This would, like I said, this is more of a form where we just check the box about which program we're going to pick. So if we're all good choosing this program, then I guess we could move on to the next item, which would be to actually take a vote. All right, so item 10, discuss and take action to approve a resolution to participate in either a tax deferment program or low interest rate. So actually, we would need a motion then just on the tax deferment, right?
I'm willing to make a motion for us to participate in the tax deferment program.
I'll second that.
Okay, any more discussion? And I think that, did they get you got the copy of the resolution, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, and this was drafted by our council. And then the actual form that we would be sending in, and I don't know if you had gotten a copy of that. I'm just looking, this kind of mirrors the resolution, I guess, that Floyd had. It's just a form and we check a box and that's it. So, and I sign it and send it off to the government. So like I said, there'll be more opportunity to talk about eligibility and what kind of requirements we would make and who would qualify later. So any more questions or discussion? No? All right. All in favor of approving a resolution to participate in the tax deferment program as set forth in Governor Lamont's Executive Order 7S? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. All right, no nays. Okay. All right, great. So we'll do that. And then I think for our next meeting, we can talk more about some of how this is going to work for the public and what documentation we're going to require. Lauren, anything you need to add on that? Or is there something else we need to clarify? No? Okay,
No.
Great. All right, good. Well, I'm sure the public will be eager to hear that. Because it does get into, do we send out a normal tax bill and then people need to certify to us and then they get a deferment, or do we just send out tax bills with a later date on them? How do we handle the landlord? So there's a lot of little things that we have to get into probably in terms of, implementing this. Okay, well, I guess we can move on then to the public comment section. Any public comment?
I don't see anyone's hand raised or any questions in the Q&A.
Okay.
Thinking we don't have any public comment for the second half of the meeting.
All right, great. So I guess a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, great, guys. And before I get you off, I'll get back to you in the next day or so about next meeting and whether we'll stick to the regular meeting or we need a special meeting, okay? Because there might be a few things we do need to get together with before 2 weeks from now, but I'll get back to you, okay?
Yep.
All right, thanks a lot, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks.